Acting!
Brilliant!
Thank you!
Thank you!
We're gonna play football. Yippee!
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody. You are listening or watching The Review. It's the OSG Sports team talking college football. I am OSG Phil. With me, OSG Nelson and Jay Wilkerson 16. We are the online sports guys, and despite us being quarantined, you being quarantined, and college football being quarantined, we're still going to talk about the game because there's always something to talk about, guys. I guess really for those who haven't been following, what have you been doing to pass the time here over the last few days?
Wilkie, go first.
Well, there's been no games to watch. I mean, we should be watching the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament right now.
Yeah,
probably seen a couple of buzzer beaters, maybe an upset here and there. Instead, wow, we're doing yard work. We're having family time. We're working from home. We're
games from the 1990s.
I mean, this is a very strange time in our. I mean, it's been a strange week, hasn't it, guys?
You ain't kidding. I mean, for me, it was weird going back a week and a half and being in a stadium that had 35,000 people in it, then racing home, trying to come from one country to this one.
With everything down behind you.
Yes. And then trying to get home, be home, watching games in that same stadium on that weekend in front of 30,000 people. And then the next day, no one's in the building. And it's just, I mean, and that was in 72 hours. So to have that happen and where we are currently with sports, and it is a unique time for the wrong reason. And the one thing that I have found in all of this, and it's part of the blatant cross promo with the other network, is folks still want to talk about sports, and it is the great escape. It's a great unifier, and when we're able to just kind of sit and talk for a while, we're not the only ones that want to talk about it, because if there's a topic on your mind, there's always been a topic on somebody else's, and it's been very humbling to see the response that we've gotten here. And folks want to talk about A, B, C, D, or E, and hey, that's what we're here for. So it's all been part of it. Phil, what's been going on with you? I know you've been the busiest of the three of us.
Yes, you have.
The other job has been kind of pulling pretty hard at the strings here, keeping me busy and hopping all over the place. But there's been time to see what's going on, and I've kind of gotten to see a little bit closer firsthand how and the hows and the whys people are closing things down. And it's just mind-boggling to see that. To be in a car at 9 o'clock in the morning in downtown Atlanta, and while you may not be the only car on the road, you're one of about 5 cars on the road.
Yeah.
It's very Walking Dead creepy-ish.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe that.
And I work at one of the, top suburban shopping malls / hotel complexes in the Atlanta suburbs. And on a noon when it's usually it's hard to find a place to park, it's a ghost town. So these are crazy times we're living in right now, and we can only hope and pray it gets better.
Yeah, guys, we talked to John mentioned something about getting the input from folks. If you'd like to give us an idea, give us a suggestion, something that you want to talk about, a topic that's on your mind, let us know. You can find us on social media. We've got time to look now. On Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, all you got to do is look up OSG Sports. We're there. We've got a phone app. John just showed you the phone if you're watching at home. And that app is free.
free.
You can find it on the iTunes, the Apple Store, to be more grammatically correct. And you can find it on Google Play. Download it. You'll get updates whenever we drop a podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let us know. I gave you all of our Twitter handles and the OSG Sports handle. We will all be there and respond. Just let us know what you think. All that being said, we've kind of found a topic that we want to talk about today, and it's an interesting one considering the lack of ability that people have to attend events at the current time, and that's attendance in college football.
Yeah.
Good report interesting report to read on CBSSports.com talking about how college football's attendance numbers for 2019 hit a 24-year-old low. It's the lowest attendance figures the game has had since 1996. And guys, it's something we've talked about a little bit on some of the previous shows. Programs, particularly the bigger programs, are having trouble really keeping the attention and getting people to put their butts in seats for a variety of reasons. I mean, what are some of the things that you see? I mean, we all know it's an issue. What can they do to keep the interest and keep people coming and being paid attendees?
Wilkie, what's your perspective on the ACC? Let's start there.
Which their numbers were down 1.2%. And that's the lowest in over 20 years. My perspective with the ACC is you really only have, let's say, 4 traditional football powers, I guess, in that conference. And then you have 4 Division I Power 5 programs in one state. So, and you also have programs within in cities where the NFL team is the focus. Miami, Pittsburgh. We'll throw Syracuse in there because they decided that New York is part of their fan base. Boston College. So you have those aspects too. And it just hasn't been a very competitive conference, especially last year in college football. But you know, if there was one thing, as we're looking at the figures, I'm looking right in front of me, and I see that the SEC is down 1.7%, which that's the one that alarms me because of the traditional football powers that are there and the culture that the three of us have been immersed in all of our lives. But I think there's several factors within the SEC, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if you're looking for an overarching thing, college football is becoming like college basketball was, I'm going to say, back in the 90s and hasn't solved that issue yet. It's way overexposed. You can watch any college basketball game on television, even if it's a mid-major. And you look, even mid-majors used to have huge crowds. I come from a mid-major program. Now that you've got maybe a third of attendance at those programs. And I think that's what college football is starting to see, because every game's on television, whether you're a Power 5, Group of 5, FCS, even some D2 games are on. And I think we're starting to see that the experience of watching it at home is much better than the experience you get when you watch it at the game.
But you don't. Money isn't that what's driving the revenue for a lot of these programs? Is the TV money?
Well, there's a dichotomy right there. Yes.
Yep.
The TV money is so rich right now that you've got to overexpose your product in lieu of having people actually physically show up. And that's why I think the numbers for the luxury boxes mean more than somebody buying a season ticket package. If those luxury box revenues start to decline, I haven't seen any numbers on that yet. So I'd be curious to see. But if you've got a large booster that owns a real estate business or whatever business, and they've entertained their clients at the games, that's one thing. They just started to pull back. I think then alarm bells are going to go off. But the alarm bell that goes off for me is seeing
I think we've lost him.
I think the large booster from any particular school decided to punk his phone call. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, he's right in the fact that for years and years and years, the schools were so dependent on that booster money. Guys, essentially, college football teams had the early version of what the pros now use in the personal seat license category, where donors had to pay a certain amount of money just to reserve the right to get a seat, then had to pay for the season tickets.
Right.
But that's now been replaced by the TV money.
Yes.
And that's really, when you look at it, particularly at a Power 5 level, that's what's driving the ship. When you've got the Ohio States and the Clemsons and the Georgias and Alabamas and the Oklahomas of the world, you're looking at $30 and $40 million paydays per team in each of those conferences just on TV money.
Right.
And how do you balance that?
Right. Now that Wilkie's back after big and little Enos Burdett decided to bump him off of the phone call. I mean, we were talking about the dichotomy, and really, you have schools that in the larger conferences, in the Power Fives, we see that the TV revenue is driving the bus there and making sure. And you always sit there and you balance that out with putting butts in seats and the sky boxes and all the personal, the large donor boxes, Wilkie, that you were talking about. And then at the same time, I think that there is that certain element of pricing out the individual fan when it comes to ticket prices at the same time. So, Wilkie, you have all of these different ideas that are playing off of each other that are creating what we're seeing.
And you mentioned the pricing out. I think that's where you're seeing the SEC attendance decline, because look where those universities are located. They're located they're land-grant universities located in the rural South. Really, only Vanderbilt is in a metropolitan city. But you're talking about a rural fan base that will spend money to spend a weekend at that campus, at that location.
That's their vacation.
And that's their vacation. And now when you got ticket packages that are well over $100.
He's absolutely right. That's what you end up with here. And
pushing a lot of people out of the games.
Yeah. And that's the, and what I want to see is, we mentioned the booster boxes, booster investments, sky boxes, those kinds of things. I want to see, when we come out the other side of what we're experiencing now, I want to see what retention levels are, Wilkie, for all of these boosters that are investing in these private boxes and in these corporate boxes, in all these campuses, especially the ones that we're talking about in the SEC. I want to see what retention levels are going to be for these large corporate donors.
No, I agree with you. Is it worth, especially when we come out of, I think you made a good point, especially when you come out of this coronavirus pandemic we're having now, where people are reevaluating where they're going to apply their dollars.
Right.
And, this could be a huge problem for those universities, especially those athletic programs that depend on that income, that extra income that supplements what the TV money doesn't pay for. So,
when you're looking at how things are right now, the Southeastern Conference, in an article in the Orlando Sentinel, plus what was mentioned in the USA Today, SEC schools are looking at a drop in revenue, of incoming revenue, of $3 million apiece. Then you're looking at how the football season gets impacted, and you're looking at booster dollars and box seats and ticket sales and all of this. And so, Wilkie, you're looking right now at minimum from SEC schools losing $3 million of revenue. And Alan Green, the athletics director at Auburn, has said that construction is not going to stop on their new football facility. But at the same time, you have you're going to have to really juggle a lot of different lanes of traffic to figure out what you want to do right now. And, USA Today came up with the revenue for the University of Florida. Their revenues in 2018, $161 million. And you're looking at basically half of that coming from rights, licensing, and ticket sales. That was 2018 for the University of Florida, Wilkie, and you're looking at all of that. And we already know no spring football. You're losing that revenue. You're seeing a bunch of different losses coming across the board. How many of these folks are going to recycle back in at the levels they were at? Wilkie, I think that's the question.
Yeah, but I mean, don't shed a tear. By no means should any of us be shedding a tear for a team at the level of a Florida, where they've got more money than God. That $41 million plus payoff that they're getting from ESPN goes a long way towards, and that's just for, mind you, that's just 4 football games.
Right.
That goes a long way towards taking care of any financial problems. We're not talking here about an Alabama or a Clemson or somebody like that that's got financial issues. They don't.
No.
They aren't going to be the problems, the ones that are suffering when people don't come to the games. It's the smaller schools, even in the Power 5. You're talking about a Vanderbilt or a North Carolina State or somebody along those lines who is a little bit more dependent on having butts in seats.
Right.
They're the ones who are going to take the hit here.
And I mean, Wilkie was talking about 4 schools in one state. You're talking about non-metropolitan areas and all of these separate ideas that we have going at it. And I know that, Wilkie, when we're looking at schools that aren't the central focus of all of these locations that you talk about in the ACC. So you're looking at metropolitan areas, you're looking at suburbs and schools, and you're looking at how folks are attracting butts in seats. But for me, I know that we're talking about the Southeastern Conference here. We're talking about the ACC with your experience level in seeing that conference grow over the last decade and a half. But for me, I also am looking at the Go Fives, and I want to see proportionally. Yeah, and the Go Fives for me, the group of 5 schools, as we call them here on the show, I want to see what the Go Fives look like and what their level of reinvestment is going forward.
Well, that's true, especially with the American Conference, because they've got some momentum going right now.
Yes.
Growth attendance-wise in 2019.
Yes, they did. And there's the argument that they're probably a better football league than the Pac-12 and the ACC.
True.
Those are programs that kind of buck the trend, because you got like the Temples, the South Floridas that are in NFL cities, and they're drawing probably a lot better than they expected. They're not putting full capacities. But they're drawing well. One thing that I just popped in my head about this whole attendance thing is, do we really need the 100,000 seat stadiums?
No.
That was in vogue, 20, 30 years ago for what people thought that's what you needed to be solvent. The Michigans obviously has it. Tennessee built theirs to over 100,000. So did Penn State. Okay, those are exceptions to the rule. But Texas is getting ready to open a 100,000 seat plus. They're expanding. Okay, maybe they can handle it. Texas A&M, I'm not so sure. I know they're going 100,000.
They're over that now with the new ideas at Kyle Field over the last handful of years,
They've got more money than God there.
They do, but at the same time,
are they going to put the same amount of butts in the seats?
Right.
I mean, even back in the Southwest Conference days, they didn't sell out all the time, and only when Texas and occasionally Arkansas came in. I see a lot of empty seats at Kyle Field, even for an SEC West game.
Correct.
Because College Station is not easy to get to.
No, it is not.
I've been there a few times. But there just seemed, and I think the reason why that they wanted these mega stadiums is they didn't anticipate the TV money being as good as it is now.
Yeah.
And so now you're seeing a lot of empty seats. And then the other thing too, it's just maybe it's a pain in the backside just to get to these damn facilities.
It is.
And do you want to spend 7 hours trying to find a parking spot, or parking in somebody's lawn, or because college campuses aren't the easiest place to get around, and
No.
you have to take the shuttle bus, and what are you going to do for 3 to 4 hours when you got nowhere to go, and they won't let you in the stadium yet? I mean, these are things that these administrators are going to have to think of. I mean, they're thinking about the stadium experience right now with the Wi-Fi and the scoreboards and all that stuff. Okay,
Don't get
that's
me
all
started
fine and
on that.
dandy, and gets the millennials and Gen Zs excited, but getting there and paying for it is a whole other ball of wax. And I think that's where the college administrators are kind of lacking in their thinking.
Kyle Field right
Yeah.
now with capacity is, with the expansion that happened 2014, 2015, at the cost of $484 million. Capacity currently at Kyle Field, 102,733. And having been there in this new expansion version of Kyle Field, and I was there before it was the expansion was completed.
So was I.
Yeah, Wilkie, I mean, it was not full. It wasn't full pre-renovation. It hasn't been full all the time post-renovation. So I think that in as much as the folks who are backing Texas A&M University could probably sit there, dump out the contents of their pockets in their double knit reversible Hager slacks and sit there and have misadventures aplenty. I don't think they really care about that at the moment, or leading into where we are right now with the landscape. But I think that they are becoming the exception, or at least you hope so, because you look at a lot of the schools in the Power Fives and you're not getting sellouts across the board. I think that this is going to be the test for all of these schools going forward, is how big should you be? Not the way it was in years past of how big can we be, but how big should we be so we're financially stable and still bringing in the revenue that we really can use these days.
You know who the perfect example of that is? Stanford Stadium, before they blew it up and rebuilt it.
Yeah.
Remember there was a Super Bowl that was played there.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, 90,000 was the seating capacity. I mean, it was huge. And when they decided to renovate and blow it up and rebuild it, I know they brought down the seating capacity to around 60,000 with some luxury boxes. So I think Stanford may have been well ahead of the curve there. And, I'm just thinking, when are we going to start seeing tarps put on some of these stadiums on the upper levels, like the Raiders did when they were still in Oakland? I mean, but I think that the problem is, and we touched on it at the top, the experience at the stadium just isn't worth the hassle you have to endure. And all of us go to college football games, and, it's, as we're getting older, it's not as fun as it used to be. And the TV experience, when you're watching it in your living room, with the HD and everything, you can do your own tailgate there.
Yeah.
It's better to do it that way. And that's what these guys are fighting against. And I understand you can have all the marketing gurus, in your, you can hire all those marketing gurus as much as you can, improve the Wi-Fi, to widen the seats, whatever, have gourmet hot dogs, but you still got to pay for it. And
yes,
what's better than just sitting in your lazy boy?
Disposable income.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the experience is better.
Yes.
Well, here's one for you. All those are great valid points, but has this also got something to do a little bit with competitive balance? When you've got a team, what I see happening is, when you're talking about the smaller conferences,
That's your phone.
5 schools, you're seeing some growth, but you're seeing some growth in the conferences that are playing good football, the Sun Belt, the AAC. And I'm wondering, does it have more to do with the fact that you've got schools playing, particularly the Power 5 schools who are losing some audience? They are losing people because they're playing cupcake games, basically. There's no incentive for you to come to the game when, say, Alabama's playing the Citadel.
Once again, that goes to bringing in revenue. You have a revenue date with a team that you have to fill. Disposable income, it's multiple points, so hang with me here. So it is a multi-pronged argument that I'm going to make. It's a combination of factors. You have a Power 5 school that has to have a venue, and they have to fill whatever's going on for that date for the venue. It's just like a basketball arena with rock concerts and other clients and things like that. But to bring in something to make sure that you meet your bottom line, you bring in an opponent like a Citadel for whatever Power 5 school you want to say. You bring in that FCS opponent. And at the same time, you have to sit here and figure out, okay, look at it like it's a big business for a second. You're going to have those days where you're going to need to bring in that other opponent that is going to make sure that you keep your bottom line, you pay off whoever's going to visit you that day, but you still make your profit. And you have those dates knowing that you can work your price point and figure out, okay, if we charge folks for this FCS homecoming opponent $40 a seat, but then you can balance it out by bringing in your opponents that are in your division in your Power 5 and charge double the mean. So
you're
basically
flexible pricing.
Yeah, it's flexible pricing, because when you're looking at some Power 5 schools that I've been to venues and had seen the price points, the FCS opponents are that lower half of the price point, but it's made up by those rivalry games on the upper end of the price point. So it's you're having to juggle the economics of it all, but at the same time, you're the guy in small town, and this is your 5 or 6 versions of investments and vacations that you take on these weekends. And I still think that working the north end of your mean, you're still pricing out the guy and keeping him away from where you want to be, but you have to buy that full season ticket package or work the secondary ticket market to try to get in there. So it's a bunch of stuff in play.
But we've already talked about Nick Saban going off on the students for not coming to some of those cupcake games, and they're not paying for the tickets.
No,
paying a very minimal price. And what we're seeing what we're seeing happen, if you look at schedules over the next decade, you're seeing a lot of these Power 5 power squads like the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Georgias and everybody else. They're beginning to start scheduling home and home with some of the bigger name schools with some of their equals, as opposed to the group of 5 schools, because
that's a solution.
Or they're doing the neutral site games because it's a paycheck.
But it's not the same paycheck that you get keeping it on campus.
True. However, you're going to a different venue, you're spending a weekend, and people plan for that. Now, I want to go back to your analogy with the Citadel playing Alabama.
Sure.
That game's going to be on TV.
Yes.
It'll be on the SEC network.
Yep.
Or streaming somewhere. Mm-hmm. That's my point.
Yes.
Years ago, that game wouldn't be on TV, and a family might end up going to that game because that's the only time they're going to see it.
Right.
But
so that plays along with my overexposure argument.
Mm-hmm. Which is it's part of it.
Now it's always going to happen. That cat's out of the bag. You can't really put it back in.
Right.
Yeah.
But are we going to still see those numbers dwindle?
Don't know. I think as long as the television contracts still have the revenue coming in at the level that they're at,
I agree.
I think that as long as that number stays consistent, I think that the number of butts in seats may not necessarily matter to these institutions because they're getting that exposure / overexposure through their television partners.
And as long as those TV ratings are up, you'll get that revenue. But the thing is, and guys, I'm alarmed by that SEC number.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the conferences,
competitive games that they play on a regular basis.
I mean, I think what 1.9 percentage off. Um, to me, and that's like I think the fourth year in a row that they've had a decline in attendance. I mean, and you've got Mississippi State redoing their stadium, another tough place to get to.
Yep.
Missouri did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the one that really alarms me because you're talking about the core of college football and the culture that, like I said at the top, the three of us have been immersed in all of our lives.
But then let me ask you this, Phil, before you get in. Have we not seen 4 straight years of revenue increases on the TV side from the contract to counteract that idea?
Yes. But you know what? ADs don't like to see empty seats.
But they don't. But you can remedy, and you can
neither do TV executives.
When you look at the games that are more competitive and the conferences that are having the more success with more teams, those attendance numbers go up. And that's what I'm saying. I would argue is if you can put more competitive games on the field,
I get that argument.
If you can put a Georgia versus Texas both in Athens and in Austin, you will get butts and seats, and you will get huge viewership, and you will get a lot of money. And I think that's the direction that we're going here. And that's which is going to eliminate those games, those cupcake games, where you have Alabama playing the Citadel. They're going to be forced to play more competitive games in order to get people there.
But how many teams are going to take that risk and risk not getting the bowl money from going to the larger bowl games, having undefeated seasons? How many teams are going to take that risk and not be in a New Year's Day bowl game to help their bottom line?
But under the current playoff system, the incentive is to get into the college football playoff. Everything else is just whatever. If you're not one of those final 4 teams, it really doesn't matter that much.
But how many
on the off chance that Alabama decides to go to Clemson's Death Valley to play the Tigers, and boy, if you're the athletic administration at Clemson, wouldn't it be enticing to have a one-time jacked up cost for those tickets and those souvenirs and for those concessions? And then can the rural person from the other part of the state who's a Clemson fan, have you just priced them out? I mean, I think these are things that college football is going to have to determine as they go toward the model that Phil's talking about, because you see that model in I know in the NBA, because a Laker Hawks game is going to cost different than a Lakers Trailblazer game. So there's that aspect of it too. But the thing to me, and we're talking more economics, TV money versus revenue from tickets and souvenirs and all that. To me, it's the stadium experience, and is it worth it to fight the traffic, to park several miles away?
As the father of the three of us on this show, that's one of the things that you as a parent have to figure out. Where is that disposable income going to go versus where it's not going to go? Are you going to pile your family into a car, invest in all of the tickets for everyone in that car, pay the parking, go through all the grief, go through all the crap, get there early, make sure everyone's entertained, make sure everyone enjoys that experience going in? I mean, you, Wilkie, of the three of us, have that perspective more than Phil or myself, just because you have that family that you have to manage dollars for.
Do I want to make the hour drive up Highway 316 to the Georgia game and park at a lot that I'm going to have to walk way up the hill to get to Sanford Stadium and be there like 5 hours before the game because that's the best parking spot I can get at that point? Right. Or do I want to take the cruise down to what used to be Turner Field and watch the GSU Panthers and know that I can park wherever I want and have a pretty good seat and enjoy the experience probably as much as I could in Athens with just at the FCS level? Of course, Georgia Tech is its own animal. But I love watching games at Bobby Dodd.
Why don't we kind of leave the first block here on that note, guys? And when we come back in the second block, we're going to continue the conversation.
That was spirited.
Well, yeah.
Talking about the attendance issues in college football. And let's talk a little bit more about how do you draw people in? What is it that what would it take to get people off the couch, away from their TV, away from their sports bar or any other place to come to the stadium and have that game day experience? We'll talk about that and some news and notes when we come back here on the second block of the review. You are listening to the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. We'll be back in just a little over a minute.
You're listening to college football rivalries and trophy games on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Hey, welcome back to the review. John Wilkerson here, John Nelson there, Phil Canner taking a pee break. But we want to continue our conversation on the attendance in college football. We got into a spirited discussion about the issues that are looming. Now we're talking about solutions. And, John, to me, I think the solution is pretty simple. I think stadiums need to be reduced, especially at some of the marginal programs, I guess is the best way to put it. And even for the large programs.
I was going to say mediocre. Yeah.
I think even for the large programs, but the stadium experience has got to be there too.
No doubt. And now that Phil is back and has found out that we've basically commandeered the beginning of the B block, Wilkie is a fan of downsizing, and I completely understand that. And I think that once we get back into the fall and the winter and we get back into athletics as we know it after the pandemic is tackled and we come out the other side, I think that that's going to be something that is a necessary question that universities are going to have to figure out. Where is our new normal? And I think in a lot of cases, it's going to end up, Phil, with downsizing, as Wilkie maintains that downsizing should happen. It probably will happen. To what extent it's going to happen, Phil, we don't really know, but we'll certainly find out.
Well, and it begs a question that has been bothering me for a while, because college football is not the only sport that's really going through this issue with getting people into the arenas. For people that are younger, for people in their 20s, the Gen Zs and the millennials,
sure,
there are so many more options for them. There's so many things for them to do.
True.
And they aren't raised around or have the same attachment to the history and importance and the traditions of going to a college football game that we were growing up.
You're right. Esports is really eating into that.
Yeah. I don't think that that's something that they can overcome. You've got to give them a really compelling reason to want to be in that stadium. And I'm not sure just saying that we're playing, hey, come to our game, we're playing NC State versus Wake Forest this week. Let's pack the house. If I'm a 27-year-old kid, and I'm not, I'm much older than that, like double.
Well, that begs the question too for me.
It's the game.
Okay, well, that begs the question for me. That is the overexposure argument right there, because think about if that game wasn't on TV, and you want to, I mean, you want to go and watch it. I mean,
But dude,
why? I mean, that's the thing to me about the overexposure. College basketball has been battling this for 30 years because they put every game on TV back then, and because you had the regional packages, you had the national packages, and it got to a point where you see nobody's going to the games at the mid-major level. And back then you had to watch the game. You had to attend the game to see what was happening. And I don't know, Phil. I mean, I see your point as far as why did these kids want to go? But I think it all goes with the overexposure and maybe the fact that the scarcity isn't there anymore, where they can just switch on the TV and watch that NC State Wake Forest game.
That's
but
not a fixable issue.
no, it's not you're right. You're right, because those contracts are in place at least until the 2030s. A lot of them. I don't know. I think this pandemic thing that we're going through right now, after everything was canceled, might have those kind of effects on college athletics, especially on the college basketball end, and football. Let's see what happens when we get to September. Are we going to have a fall camp? I tend to think we are.
Yeah.
But there's doomsdayers out there that are saying that the season might be affected. That remains to be seen. I tend to be an optimist on this, but I think other sports. And I know we discuss college football, but the other sports, this might be kind of a watershed moment. But I think really for college basketball right now, I'm missing the tournament, but I haven't seen a whole lot of chatter about it.
Right. And really, if you're a college basketball fan, unless you're a hardcore college basketball fan, how interested are you even in that game until it gets to the end of February, the beginning of March, when the conference tournaments fire up and the March Madness begins?
And we've seen the decline in the tournaments. The interest it just isn't there anymore. And I think we're starting to see that in the college football championship games. The interest just isn't there. SEC to me is its own animal. Big 12, I think, is as good as the SEC because you're dealing with really hardcore football fans. Big 10 kind of surprises me because they're having issues in that way, but I figured it would have been up there with the SEC. But nobody cares about these championship games, and I think that's where we're starting to see perhaps that erosion in college football.
Right, and it's something that I've talked about several times on the show. You're talking about 130 Division I college football programs now, and in any given year, you're talking about maybe 8 or 10 schools that actually have a chance to compete for the college football playoff.
Yeah,
and that disincentivizes.
There you go.
Very good.
Programs, when you start, if you lose 2 games early, you're basically out. And It doesn't matter the program. What's the incentive at that point?
Wow.
Games and get excited if you know you have no chance of competing for a conference title or a shot at playing in the playoff.
Wow, what a wild mood swing we've had there. We've gone from attendance to now you got no shot to win a national title.
But that has something. It all fits.
I agree.
Because it's hard to motivate somebody to come to a game when you know that game doesn't really mean anything.
That's true. So I think it ain't going to happen anytime soon. We got to bring back the scarcity of the games, and I'm interested to see what the next 10 years are going to be like attendance wise. Will ADs and marketing gurus that are there's like thousands of them employed by these athletic departments now, whether that's going to take hold. Do you really need mega speed Wi-Fi at your college football venue?
It's not going to fix the problem.
No,
It's not going to draw folks there. It's like, oh, I've got Wi-Fi, and I hate to break it to folks, who have had campuses do this, they need to do better jobs because that has failed as a thought.
And do you need like a million foot video board? I mean, is that going to get you in?
It's a shiny object.
Gigantic, pretty picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a shiny object.
So apparently that's what they think the Gen Zers and the millennials like.
That'd be a nope from me. I mean, I get it, but
I'm not seeing that. Let me ask you guys both this. A future where you're having the non-conference games be strong Power 5 team versus strong Power 5 team. Is that enough to change the tide here? Is that enough to stem the losses?
Well, here's the interesting thing about that, Phil, because I think it can be. The thing is, those games are so far out. I'm trying to think of one offhand.
Georgia, Clemson in 2024.
Okay, so where are the states of those programs going to be in 4 years? I mean, that's the thing. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be fine. Yeah, you're right. But I mean, it's something. I mean, you never know. You never know, especially with the transfer portal and free agency and so forth. I mean, you don't know. I mean, look at college basketball. I mean, guys are leaving after mass people leave Duke each year, and they're able to reload. But
in Kentucky, yeah. But once again, you're talking about the blue bloods of that particular sport.
Yes. Yes, it all goes back to the same thing. Guys, I think we could talk about this. We have talked
Part
about
one.
A long time. It's a fascinating topic and one that I certainly would love to revisit here as we go on across the summer, because we're going to be looking for content and ways to fill the shows. But I'm thinking maybe here we kind of hit some news and notes so we don't drag on and keep people too long.
Were we dragging?
We weren't dragging, but
fired up.
We've been talking about this for a long period of time. There is a few things going on in the world of college football. Probably the biggest news just happened I guess, really as we record this.
Over the weekend, yeah.
Word comes out that probably the highest profile person to enter the transfer portal at the end of the winter, beginning of the spring, Trey Sermon, who played quite a bit at Oklahoma, has decided to end his portalship by landing at Ohio State.
Grad transfer, immediately eligible. What a surprise.
I'm shocked.
Yes, I'm shocked. Wilkie, what about you? The pride of Sprayberry High School heading to Ohio State. I know you're stunned.
So he's going from one blue blood program to another, a team that likes to run the ball. Just wanted to see how the lingering effects of the knee injury will be. And so that's what I'm interested in. And without a spring practice.
Yeah. Harrison High School handing off to Sprayberry High School here in the footprint at Ohio State. You like apples?
For those of you who don't know what John's talking about, he's talking about a couple of Georgia high school football powerhouse schools. Where
both from Cobb County.
From the suburbs, playing at TOSU, the suburbs of Atlanta. That is epic, but it shouldn't be a surprise.
And Sermon takes the place of the departed J.K. Dobbins, who did a fantastic job for the Buckeyes last year running the football and really was the linchpin of that offense, despite Justin Fields being the quarterback and putting up big numbers too. And that's a good question there that Wilkie kind of brought up. I'm wondering how this is going, how without spring games and without spring practice, the time for these guys to assimilate is going to change a little bit. And this may be a conversation for a later show because I think it's a very valid question on a lot of levels. Are we going to see a lot of movement here while we're in kind of a virtual lockdown where people can't really do much or go visit places? Are we going to see a lot of guys bouncing around, or is Sermon going to be it for a little while?
Didn't stop Trey Sermon from portaling just because you can't have any kind of direct contact.
No, I think the portaling is here to stay, and will keep going during this whole thing. My thing is, Are university presidents going to start questioning the value of spring football? And I mean, on the academic side, I'm just bringing this out here because you really can't stop it because it's now a money-making proposition.
Exactly.
The spring games.
Yep.
But I'm just, that question just popped in my head.
You know,
are those 15
I don't see
practices
spring games
really worth
stopping.
it? No, spring games don't stop. Spring games been around forever.
Yeah.
But they never made money. They never charged you for spring games.
But
as I
now
recall.
it is a revenue source.
Oh, it's a huge
Exactly.
revenue source now. They're all televised. Most of them are played in front of huge crowds.
Goes back to our discussion that we've had this entire show. We just added a new dynamic. It's spring football attendance and paying to get in the door.
But the other thing that I think is just interesting, the NCAA's kind of halted in-person meeting and recruiting through at least the end of mid-April.
Don't care.
But then you've got the master himself, the Mad Hatter, who has already figured out how to work around it by doing virtual junior days.
Yeah. Go for it.
I love Les Miles.
Figure it out. I mean,
But
hey,
where's he
if you
coaching?
can't,
Where is he coaching? He needs all the help he can get at KU.
Yeah.
Correct.
But in a world,
Correct.
in a world where we're recording a podcast on audio while at the same time recording it on video to do a video version of it, it's really not that absurd. I mean, it's not something that would have happened 10 years ago, but it's something that's happening now.
Hey, if you're the first one in the door and you get that recruit that you're looking for ahead of somebody else in this window, hey, the Mad Hatter, go for it. You know, you got hey, if you're going to bring kids in and you're going to recruit on junior days and you're going to do it virtually, it's probably a window to the future. It just so happens to having to be done out of necessity.
I love it. I mean, it's out of the box.
I love Les Miles.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of the box, but at the same time, that box is changing.
Yeah.
It's not the same box that it was 5-10 years ago.
And when does the NCAA put a kibosh on that?
Yeah, even though there's no reason that they should.
If you're recruiting in an eligible window, it mentions nothing about how you're doing it.
Yeah,
True. True.
You're not meeting in person, so why not? It's a chance. There are people that do job interviews now all the time.
Oh, yeah.
You can speak to this. People do job interviews just like we're doing here by recording the show on Skype. Same way.
They do. Been through a few.
Man, that technology, ain't it something?
It's something, ain't it?
Special.
Guys, what do you say we wrap up the show here this week? And just for those of you listening at home, what you're going to probably hear from us over the next few weeks, we're going to kind of put on the little crystal ball, the looking glass, and do some deep dive work because, well, we need some stuff to talk about. And I think over the next few weeks, you're going to hear us take a look in depth at some of the major conferences and some of the Group of Five conferences and see where they're at, do kind of an assessment, see where they're going, and see what kind of impact the current world that we're living in as of right now, how that's going to impact them. All that and more coming up on some upcoming episodes of the review. Guys, we're done this week. We have talked all we should talk. I think we're hitting and coming perilously close to that hour mark, which means it's stop. So anything you want to add before I say goodbye?
Just stay safe, stay healthy, and practice social
distancing.
Wash the hands.
Wash the hands.
Wash damn hands.
Don't touch your face.
Oh, sorry. Almost.
Stay healthy.
all that stuff.
Folks, thanks for sticking around. You have been listening to The Review. It's college football on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.